If you've ever wanted your spreadsheet to visually show you not just how you're progressing towards a goal, but whether you're in good shape or you're in trouble, this video is for you. I'm going to show you how to build a progress bar in Google Sheets that automatically updates as your data changes. Just like that. We'll walk through building the default progress bar, changing the color like this. And since we're working with some simple budget data here, we'll walk through how to make it turn red when you're over budget, green when you're on track or better than expected, and yellow when you're close to hitting your budget. And I know we've got budget data here, but you could use this exact same approach for a habit tracker, a project task list, a sales goal, anything where you're tracking progress towards a target. So I've got a blank slate here with all of our budget info in it. So let's start with the basic progress bar formula. And if you already know how SPARKLINEs work, you can skip ahead to where we get into the color changing part. So progress bars in Google Sheets use the SPARKLINE function. So we'll start with equals SPARKLINE and we'll open our parentheses. The first thing we need to give it is our data, our budget data in this case. So since we're starting with income, I want to show how close my actual income is to the amount that I budgeted for the month. So I'm going to start by putting in a fraction, which is my actual amount. I can click in the cell or I could type in G7 divided by or slash my budgeted amount. So again, I could click in here or I could type in F7. So that gives the progress bar the proportion that it needs to know to figure out how full to draw the bar in this cell. So now we need to tell Sheets what kind of chart we want, because SPARKLINE can do a few different things. After our actual divided by our budget, we'll put a comma. We'll open up our curly brackets. And inside the curly brackets is where all of our formatting options are going to live. So first we'll type in chart type in quotation marks. So that's Sheets' way of knowing that we're specifying the chart type. We'll put a comma. Then we'll type in bar in quotes because we want to do a progress bar. And then we'll do a semicolon to move on to the next option. Next, we'll set the maximum value for a progress bar. So we need to tell it what's the highest amount that it could be. So we'll type in max in quotation marks, comma, the number 1, because we're working with a proportion, our max is going to be 1, meaning 100%. We'll close up our curly brackets, close up our parentheses, press enter, and there is your basic progress bar. It will default to orange and it'll fill based on your data over here. So since we went over budget this month, or not over budget, but we exceeded our budgeted amount this month for income by $454, it's going to fill up this entire cell here. I also like to add a percentage next to the progress bar so that you can see the exact number. And so for that, we'll just do equals our actual amount divided by our budgeted amount and press enter. And it's going to, depending on what the cell is formatted as, right now it's formatted as a number. I'm going to change that to a percentage. So we'll just click on format as a percent. And I don't want any decimals with that, so I'm just going to decrease the decimal places. So now we can easily see the percentage that goes along with the progress bar. I'm going to go ahead and add in these other progress bars below. All right, now we have all of our basic progress bars. Now for the fun part, making it change color. So let's go back into our formula. here in income, and after this max information, we're going to add a semicolon so that we can add another formatting option here. Then we're going to type in color 1 in quotation marks. We'll put a comma. And so this is where we're going to tell Sheets what color we want the bar to be. You could type in a basic color name in quotes, like black, or you could use a hex code. So we could either type in black, and we've got a nice black bar, or we could type in the hex code. Does the same thing. So I'm going to update all of the progress bars below so that they all look the same. All right. So now we've changed the color for all of our bars, and honestly, I kind of like how this looks, nice and clean and simple, but if you want the progress bars to respond to the changes in your budget data or whatever kind of data you're using, we can do that too. And so instead of a fixed color here, we can have these update by using the if statement. So where you normally put your color information, the specifics on what color you want, you're going to put an if statement. And ifs works by checking conditions in order and then returning the first one that's true. So we'll set up our logic. So the first thing we want to do is see if our actual amount that we earn this month is less than, let's say, 80% of our budgeted amount. And if it is, we want to set the color as red. So let's type in IFS, open our parentheses, and then we're going to take our fraction again, so our actual divided by our budgeted amount. And if this is less than 0.8 or 80%, we want our progress bar to be red. So do a comma, and then in parentheses, or not in parentheses, I'm sorry, in quotation marks, we'll put our color, and I'm going to do a hex code here. Do a muted red. We'll do another comma. So the next thing we'll do is if it's less than 1 or less than 100% of the amount we budgeted for income, we're going to set it to yellow. So if our actual divided by our budgeted amount is less than 1, comma, and then I'm going to enter in another hex code for yellow, another comma, and then one last time we're going to take our actual divided by our budget amount, and this time we're going to say if that number, that percentage is greater than or equal to 1, we want it to be green. I'll do a comma, and then I'm going to enter green as a hex code. I'm going to close up my parentheses, my ifs parentheses, and then press enter. And now we can see that because we are at 106%, we have exceeded our budget for the month for income, our progress bar is showing up as green. So let's set up the variable expenses, because we'll switch the colors around for that. So again, we'll go back into our formula, and where we've got our color information, we're going to enter in that if statement. So we've got IFS, open parentheses, and then we want to see if our variable expenses, so we'll click on our actual variable expenses, slash or divided by our budgeted expenses, if that amount is, let's say, less than or equal to 75%, comma, and since we're flipping it, since this is expenses, we'll make this green if we're well under our budget. So I'm going to put the hex code in for green, do another comma, and then if I'm getting close to my budgeted amount for the month for these variable expenses, so let's say like less than or equal to 95%, we'll have it turn yellow. So again, I'm going to do my actual, click on my actual amount divided by my budgeted amount, and we'll say less than or equal to 0.95 for 95%, and we'll make that yellow, and I'm going to enter in my hex code color, so comma, and then finally we'll add a comma, and we'll say if our variable expenses are over 95%, we'll make it red. So we know that we are like very close to our budget or over. So our actual amount, we'll click on that, slash or divided by our budgeted amount, and then we're going to say greater than 0.95, comma, and then we'll enter in our hex code for red. We're going to close up our parentheses and press enter. And so we've exceeded our budget for variable expenses. We're at 101%. Our progress bar is showing up as red. I'm going to quickly update these final two. The fixed expenses is just following the same formula as variable expenses, and savings is following the same formula as income. So I'm just going to copy them and update their cell values. All right, so there we've got our progress bars that update based on the values of your data, in our case budget data. And you could add in more colors than this. I just did 3, but you could add in more if you like. So let's see. So if we, this is the beginning of the month, we'd earned $2,000 so far. You can see that our income progress bar turns red, and we'd only spent $500 in variable expenses. That turns green. Maybe we went over in fixed expenses, and we saved exactly what we planned to. So that's it. That's one formula that gives you a visual, color-coded progress tracker that updates automatically as your data changes. I'm going to show you one final thing just to make this look a little nicer when you have zeros here in these budgeted amounts. I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's say we have zeros here. You get these errors that don't look that great. But we can easily fix that. We can make them be blank. We can enter in a specific message very, very easily. So we go into our formulas, and before the SPARKLINE formula, we type if error, open our parentheses, and then the first bit of information is what you want to appear in that cell when there's no errors. So we keep our formula there. And then at the very end, we're going to type a comma and tell Sheets what we want to put in this cell when there is an error. And so we could just leave it blank, close our parentheses, press enter, and be done with it. So now we don't have that little divide by 0 error going on. If we want to add in a message, we type quotes, and then whatever the message is in quotes. You can do that here. You could also put in an emoji, type a comma, quotation mark, add in an emoji here, another quotation mark, close the parentheses, and we've got a little emoji there. So that's just another simple formula to make your spreadsheet look a little cleaner. If you want a budget spreadsheet that already has this built in, along with a bunch of other useful features, I'll link to that in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.